Marcus Cato once tried to delay proceedings by talking out the Senate, but Caesar had him forcibly ejected by a lictor and led off to prison. Lucius Lucullus went a little too far in opposing Caesar's policy, whereupon Caesar so terrified him by threats of legal proceedings that Lucullus fell on his knees and begged his pardon. Good patrician Romans shouldn't need to fall to their knees and beg for mercy from another Roman patrician. See, that sort of thing is where some people really hated Caesar, that he would bring another man of equal rank, or supposedly, on paper, essentially equal rank, would bring him to something like that. That's the sort of thing a Greek or Attic king or tyrant or Alexander the Great might do. Demand that someone kneel or bow or prostrate themselves before you. Romans shouldn't need to do that to other Romans. But Caesar here, in his year of consulship, is really wielding power as something very, very close to an autocrat. Obviously, he has to answer to the other members of the triumvirate, Pompey and Crassus. But beyond that, he is really dominating politics, absolutely dominating politics. And of course, that causes resentment in anyone who it doesn't favour. So the equestrian class and the people love him, but the optimates and the senatorial order loathe him. They already hated him, really, already. And now, of course, he's absolutely their implacable enemy. Suetonius continues, hearing that Cicero had been making a doleful speech in court about the evils of his times, Caesar at once granted the long-standing request of Cicero's enemy, Publius Clodius, to be transferred from patrician to plebeian rank, rushing the measure through at the 9th hour of the very same day. So we said already, didn't we, that Clodius becomes a tribune so that he can attack Cicero. Well, you can only be a tribune if you're a plebeian, i.e. not aristocratic. But Clodius was aristocratic. Not only was he aristocratic, he was the scion of the Claudian family, so he was as aristocratic as it can be, almost. But you can legally, formally, have yourself reduced from a patrician to a plebeian. We even had that in Britain, it's possible. There was an old MP, he's passed away now, Tony Benn, who had a hereditary title, and he renounced it so that he could be an MP. This was back in the 60s, I believe. If you had a hereditary title, you'd have to sit in the House of Lords. But he really wanted to sit in the Commons, so he sort of legally renounced his title. Anyway, Clodius has been asking for this for a while because he's ambitious. He realises that one of, if not probably the best, most efficient path to power for him is through a tribuneship to begin with. But he would have to renounce his patrician standing. And finally, Caesar has got the power as sole consul to do that, and he does. Okay, Suetonius continues. But he rushed the measure through that very same day. Finally, he began an attack on the opposition faction by bribing Vettius to announce that some of them had tried to make him assassinate Pompey. See, Suetonius just flatly says that Vettius was bribed. He's prepared to go with the slightly more scandalous version, as though it's just simply a fact, whereas, if you remember a few moments ago, Appian said nobody really knew for sure. And if I'm being a serious historian here, I don't know, so I'll have to say that nobody really knows. Whereas, and again, a classic sign of what Suetonius is, what he's like, that he just says, no, he was bribed. It was a bribe. He goes on. As has been arranged, Vettius was brought before the rostra and mentioned a few names, but the whole affair was so suspicious that it led to nothing, and Caesar, realising that he had been too hasty, is said to have poisoned his agent. So Suetonius says Caesar was behind that whole thing as a sort of a false flag, and then when it looked like it was backfiring, just killed the man and never mentioned it again. Suetonius. Caesar then married Calpurnia, daughter of Lucius Piso, his successor in the consulship, and at the same time betrothed his own daughter Julia to Gnaeus Pompey, thus breaking her previous engagement to Servilius Caepio, who had recently given him a great deal of support in the struggle against Bibulus. He now always called on Pompey to open debates in the Senate, though having hitherto reserved this honour for Crassus, thereby flouting the tradition that a consul should continue throughout the year to preserve the order of precedence established for speakers on the calends of January. Having thus secured the goodwill of his father-in-law Piso and his son-in-law Pompey, Caesar surveyed the many provinces open to him and chose Gaul as being the likeliest to supply him with wealth and triumphs. True, he was at first appointed governor only of Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum, the proposal came from Vatinius. But afterwards the Senate added Transalpine Gaul to his jurisdiction, fearing that if this were denied him, the people would insist that he should have it. His elation was such that he could not refrain from boasting to a packed Senate house some days later that, having now gained his dearest wish, to the annoyance and grief of his opponents, he would proceed to stamp upon their persons. Very haughty, if that's the case, if Caesar really said that. That's very arrogant and haughty. When someone interjected with a sneer that a woman would not find this an easy feat, he answered amicably, "Why not? Semiramis was supreme in Syria, and the Amazons once ruled over a large part of Asia." At the close of his consulship, the praetors Gaius Memmius and Lucius Domitius demanded an inquiry into his official conduct during the past year. Caesar referred the matter to the Senate, which would not discuss it. So after 3 days had been wasted in idle recriminations, he left for Gaul. His quaestor was at once charged with various irregularities as a first step towards his own impeachment. Then Lucius Antistius, a tribune of the people, arraigned Caesar, who, however, appealed to the whole college of tribunes, pleading absence on behalf of national importance, and thus staved off the trial. To prevent a recurrence of this sort of trouble, he made a point of putting the chief magistrates of each new year under some obligation to him, and refusing to support any candidates or allow them to be elected unless they promised to defend his cause while he was absent from Rome. He had no hesitation in holding some of them to their promises by an oath or even a written contract. End quote. So, you can see there two big themes that come up and really dominate not only the next 10 years or more, but dominate really the whole rest of the Republic, the dying Republic. One is that Caesar's enemies are now hell-bent on prosecuting him. They're probably going to be unable to murder him. It's very, very difficult to murder him in the style of the Gracchi brothers or Saturninus or one of those older tribunes. He's got the extreme goodwill of the people and the equite class, and now he's a military general again. He's got legions under his command. And also, as an imperator or as a governor, he's got immunity from prosecution. That's absolutely key. But eventually, those offices will lapse, they think, they hope. And at which point, they want all their ducks in a row so they can prosecute him into the ground. Prosecute him for loads and loads of things he's just done in that last year, let alone things he's going to do in the next 10 years. So, in other words, Caesar's enemies will do everything they can, lawfare. They'll do everything they can to prosecute him into oblivion. And that's a theme that just is not going away now. And then the other theme is Caesar's countermeasures against that. And you can see there what Suetonius told us, that he started just packing all the important offices, magistracies, with people that are loyal to him one way or another. Now, just to cut ahead a little bit, or just to tell you how that really plays out, he's able to do that to varying degrees of success. Largely, it's successful, but if you try and keep that going for like 10 years, eventually there'll be chinks in that. It'd be very, very difficult to keep that going completely indefinitely. Because we're talking about lots and lots of people he needs to keep on his side, who need to run dangers themselves in order to protect him in Rome while he's away. So he is able to do it, you would say, in the sweep of things, very successfully, but not 100% ultimately, completely successfully. That would be a giant, giant ask, you know. So, but those themes are now staples for our story going forward.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.